For 21 seasons, Norm Abram walked into a small Massachusetts workshop, put on his safety glasses, and built something beautiful right in front of you. No drama, no elimination rounds, no celebrity guests. Just a man, his tools, and a plan. The show was still popular, still profitable, still fully funded, and beloved by millions of loyal viewers who tuned in every single week. So when it ended in 2009, fans weren't expecting it. And the reason Norm walked away wasn't what anyone thought. To understand why the new Yankee workshop ended, you first have to understand what it actually was, and just how rare that kind of television really is. The show launched in 1989, created by producer Russell Morash, the same man behind This Old House. Morash had watched Norm Abram work for years as lead carpenter on that show and saw something different in him. Not just skill, patience, clarity. The kind of man who could make a dovetail joint look approachable to someone who had never held a chisel in their life. So Morash built him his own stage, a 936-square-foot workshop tucked behind a Massachusetts farmhouse, stocked with every tool a serious woodworker could want. The format was deceptively simple. Norm would introduce a project, a blanket chest, a shake-aside table, a Windsor chair, often visiting a historical landmark tied to that style first. He'd examine the original piece, talk about its construction, then go back to the shop and build it himself. Step by step. No shortcuts. No hired hands doing the hard work off camera. Just Norm, talking through every cut, every joint, every decision. The show ran on PBS with no network pressure to chase ratings through stunts or celebrity appearances, and it was the opposite of everything trending on television at the time. Somehow, that's exactly why it worked. Audiences found something genuinely restorative about watching a man who was simply very good at what he did, doing it without pretense. By the early 90s, it had become a Saturday morning institution. Viewers didn't just tune in to learn technique, they tuned in to spend time with Norm. His quiet confidence, his plaid shirt, his safety glasses, the way he reminded you at the top of every episode to protect your eyes. It added up to something television rarely produces, genuine comfort. Over 21 seasons, approximately 235 complete projects were built on screen, ranging from simple shop jigs to elaborate period reproductions, outdoor structures, and even a sailing boat. The cultural footprint was real. Woodworking club memberships grew. Tool sales spiked on weekends after new episodes aired. Instructors credited the show for bringing new students through their doors. Norm hadn't simply hosted a program. He had become, without fanfare, one of the most influential figures in American craft of his generation. What the audience saw was a 22-minute episode. What they didn't see was everything it took to make one. Each project required somewhere between 40 and 60 hours of preparation and filming. That meant sourcing and inspecting the right lumber, often specific species and exact dimensions, before a single cut could even begin. It meant designing a build process that would actually work on television, deciding which steps could be shortened and which needed to be shown in full. It meant setting up camera angles, lighting, and tool placement so everything looked seamless on screen. And at the center of all of it, Norm still had to build the piece. That's the part that made the show fundamentally different. He wasn't performing carpentry. He was doing it, for real, in real time, with real consequences if something went wrong. Every cut viewer's soul was his. Every joint was his. And if something didn't fit, he fixed it himself. There were no stand-ins, no off-camera corrections, no second version quietly swapped in. That authenticity became the soul of the show. People who understood woodworking could see immediately that it was real. And people who didn't understand it could still feel it. There's a difference between watching someone demonstrate something and watching someone truly know what they are doing. Norm had that quiet authority, and it carried every episode. But that authenticity came at a cost. During production seasons, the show was a full-time commitment, often 40 to 60 hours a week, and at the same time, he was still working on This Old House, filming alongside an entirely separate production schedule. For years, he was essentially doing two demanding television jobs at once. On This Old House, Norm contributed as a master carpenter, important, but shared. On the new Yankee workshop, he was everything. The designer, the builder, the teacher, the host. Every episode depended entirely on him showing up and doing the work, start to finish. And then there was the physical environment. The workshop floor was bare concrete. During active filming, Norm stood on it for 8 to 12 hours a day, not for a few months, but for more than 2 decades. Year after year, season after season, absorbing that impact through his joints, his back, his feet. From the outside, the show felt calm, almost meditative. But inside that workshop, it was relentless. A constant cycle of lifting, cutting, bending, adjusting, and repeating. Norm never showed that strain on camera. He never let the effort break the illusion of ease. But the reality was simple. The very thing that made the show so genuine was also what made it so demanding. By 2009, Norm was approaching 60 years old. The effects of 2 decades of demanding physical labor didn't arrive all at once. They built slowly, year after year, until they became impossible to ignore. Repetitive sawing, chiseling, and sanding done thousands of times led to persistent joint pain that grew harder to manage. His back carried its own strain from years of bending over workbenches and lifting heavy lumber. Plantar fasciitis, caused by standing for long hours on unpadded concrete, had become a chronic issue. None of this ever showed on screen. That was simply who Norm was. He didn't complain. He didn't let the audience see the cost. The work looked just as careful and unhurried in the final seasons as it had in the first. But behind the scenes, quiet conversations had already begun with producer Russell Morash and WGBH about what continuing would actually mean, because the question was no longer whether the show still worked. It clearly did. The question was what it was costing him to keep it going. The ending, when it came, was Norm's decision entirely. In the years since the show concluded, various rumors circulated about feuds behind the scenes, about network pressure, about creative disagreements or declining viewership. All of it was false. The people closest to the show confirmed it clearly and consistently. There were no external forces pushing Norm out. The show had no enemies. It was not cancelled. It was ended, deliberately, thoughtfully, and entirely on Norm's own terms. Norm himself addressed it with characteristic directness, saying they'd had a great run, built challenging projects, met wonderful woodworkers, and received loyal support from millions of viewers. No grievances. No finger-pointing. Just gratitude and a clean acknowledgement that it was time. Russell Morash framed the situation simply. The show could not continue without Norm. There was no version of the new Yankee workshop that made sense with anyone else at the workbench. It was a specific man doing a specific thing in a specific way, and the decision to end it was inseparable from the decision Norm had made about his own life and body. Morash also noted something that rarely gets mentioned in discussions of the ending. Norm had unfinished projects of his own. His timber-framed colonial home in Carlisle, Massachusetts, a house he had built himself, had details he had always intended to get to but never quite had time for, because the show consumed so much of his energy every production year. Ending the new Yankee workshop wasn't retreating from woodworking. It was finally making space to do it on his own terms, for himself and his family, without cameras or deadlines or the accumulated pressure of being the entire foundation of a major television production. On October 16, 2009, WGBH Boston made the announcement officially. No further episodes would be produced. There was no farewell special, no final episode with a ribbon tied around it, no dramatic goodbye. It ended the way Norm had always worked, quietly, without unnecessary ceremony, and with everything already said that needed to be said. The announcement landed like a genuine shock, even to those who followed the show closely. What caught people off guard was the absence of warning signs, no declining quality, no rumors of trouble, no final season that felt like a farewell. The show had simply been doing what it always did, and then it stopped. Message boards and woodworking forums lit up within hours. Fine Woodworking magazine reported that reader response was unlike anything they had seen in reaction to a television news story. People weren't just sad about losing a program. They were writing the kind of messages you write when you lose something genuinely woven into the rhythm of your life. Veteran woodworkers credited the show with rekindling passions they had almost let go. Beginners described how Norm's patient instruction had given them the confidence to attempt their first real project. Parents described watching episodes with their children, and those children, now adults, wrote about still remembering which projects they had watched together. The legacy is difficult to fully measure, in part because the show worked so quietly and asked so little attention for itself. It just showed up, every Saturday for 21 seasons, and taught people how to build things. The 235 projects Norm built on screen remain as relevant today as the day they were filmed: Shaker furniture, Windsor chairs, blanket chests, Chippendale mirrors. Classic forms that endure because they are honest, built without ornamentation that hides poor joinery, designed to last for generations. In January 2023, more than 13 years after the show ended, all episodes became available to watch for free on YouTube. A new generation of viewers found the show as if for the first time, people in their 20s and 30s responding with the same quiet admiration every generation before them had. People describing staying up until 2 in the morning watching episodes. People ordering their first set of chisels after a single build. People saying it was the most calming content they had found on the internet. Norm continued on this old house after the workshop closed, contributing his expertise in a far more sustainable supporting role. He also finally had time to return to his own home, to the details he had never gotten around to, building quietly and on his own schedule. In 2022, after more than 4 decades on television, he officially retired from this old house, the send-off as quiet and respectful as everything else about his career. The workshop still stands, and Norm still visits from time to time. Not to film, not to perform, just to build. That, more than anything else, is the whole story.